Hi friends, welcome back. It's Sandy here. Today I am going to make 5 cards using the new Vivid Expressions collection from Spellbinders. We have the Vivid Blooms, we have a Better Plus plate of Ideal Moments, we have Vivid Script Sentiments, we have the Eyelet Scalloped Border, we have the Pressed Lace Border Press Plate, we have Sweeping Script Sentiments, we have this beautiful embossing folder, Blooming Butterflies, I'm saving that one for last, and Berry Fields Border. I'm also going to choose my colors using a color cube card, and I end up choosing number 391, and I went through all of my paper stash and I grabbed a bunch of colors that go with the colors on the cube card. For my first card, I am going to use the 3 colors that are on the right-hand side of the card. So the yellow, the teal, and the dark teal. I'm starting with my card base, and I have decided to take these Better Plus plates, and this is the Sweeping Script Sentiments. I white glimmer foiled onto the center of my piece of teal. And then I cut out 3 of the flowers, and I'm showing you the pieces that I use. There is a solid background piece. I did the darker yellow in that, an overlay in the lighter yellow, and then the stem is in black. And the center of the flower comes from this little grouping here. Okay, and we obviously did like 4 of those. And I'm using the Barely Art Glue to glue these together. This is really handy with the fine tip. You can get your glue right into the little tiny nooks and crannies that you need to. And using a pair of tweezers also helps. And I like to pick up my little tiny pieces with my Place and Score embellishment wand. So nice and easy to pop those little pieces in, adding a little bit of glue along the bottom and adding the stem and the leaves. And I'm going to need 3 of these to complete this card. I also cut out some of the larger leaves in the dark teal, and I'm using cut in half foam squares on the back of all of these pieces to attach them to the card front, and the foam just gives them a little bit more dimension and makes them a little bit more interesting. So you're just going to work your way around. I kind of like to put the main pieces on first and then come back in and place the other ones and try and get them evenly in between. Okay, the leaves down in the bottom left-hand corner, and then the 3rd flower in the bottom right-hand corner, and a little leaf up by the sentiment, and then fill in and add a little bit of white with the 3 flowers. And then pick it up, trim off all of the extra pieces, and I'm using my Spellbinders scissors. They are no stick, and they're awesome for that kind of thing. And here's the finished card. There's number 1. You could also take an extra flower and pop it on the inside of your card. For card number 2, I'm going to the other side, and I'm going to use the kind of pinky peachy color, and I'm making the same flowers, but I'm doing them in 2 different colors. So there's a dark peach in the background and a light peach in the foreground, and black leaves. For the side, I'm using the Berry Fields border, so I cut it out in black first, and then I used the border die to cut out a white piece to fit in behind it. And yes, you can add black and white. They're neutral colors when you're playing with a color palette. And then there's a bunch of little berries that you can cut out, and I did those out of the light pink and added those to the Berry Fields border. And this is going to go down the left-hand side of my card, and I think this one's very dramatic. I really like how this one came out. So I've already placed my teal card front onto my top folding white A2 size card base, and I have added my border, and I'm just adding or cutting off any overhang that I've got, and I'm showing you my awesome no stick scissors. Okay, so now I have 3 of the flowers cut out, and they're exactly the same as the yellow ones, so I'm not going to show you again how I built them. But what I'm doing here is I'm trying to evenly space them down kind of the left-hand side of the card. And it takes a little bit of fiddling, but you'll get there. Okay, and then I'm just, again, using my Barely Art Glue, and I'm just going to tap down the little stems so that they're not kind of hanging out there blowing in the breeze. So next we need a sentiment for this little guy. Originally I had decided to go with the thank you from the Vivid Script Sentiments, and I got that all cut out in black and white, and I thought it would kind of mirror the image going on in the left hand side, and I do like that, but I decided that it was a little bit busy. So what I did was I grabbed these Ideal Moments sentiments, and it's a better press plate, And what I did was I white foiled onto black cardstock with these guys again. And I really like these because you foil once, you die cut once, and you end up with all these extra little pieces. And there's a nice variety of sentiments. So I decided on one of these. It says Happy Birthday, and I'm tucking that in the bottom right-hand corner. I like that better than going all the way up the side. For card number 3, I decided to use all the things, and we had a good old time cutting them all out. So there's a new larger flower, and what you want to do is 2 layers of a hem so that I got a contrasting dark layer in behind and a lighter layer in front, and I'm using yellow pieces to show you the different pieces to put them together, and that great big one with all the holes in it is the center for this big guy, and then there's kind of a scalloped circle that goes on next, and then I cut the center out of black, and I'm just removing one of those little release papers from the back of the foil squares. They really, or the foam squares, they really do get everywhere. Okay, so I'm putting all those pieces back. We used a couple of the large leaves, and I cut those in black. I'm just showing the die I used for that. I've already showed you that one. And those guys, and then this little berry type flower, he has a foreground and a background, and again I use the 2 colors for that. And then the little stem die from the first open flower, okay, the black and white one is the big one at the top, and then the smaller little stem is the little berry flower at the bottom. And then there's a separate die that has just 2 leaves, and I'm pointing to it right there, and I did 2 of those in black for the little berry flower. And then finally for this little cluster, I did the background in this die in a dark teal, and then the white flowers with black heads. Okay, so I'm showing you my other craft stack. This is a smaller one, and it fits over top of the big one. These things stack like crazy, and they are awesome when you're doing lots of die cutting like I'm doing today. Okay, so I'm scoring my card base and just going to get that folded and burnished, and then I'm going to add my light teal card front to my card, and I like to use my Score Buddy for this. Tucking everything into that top left hand corner helps line everything up for me, and very little trimming when you do it this way. It's just so easy. Tuck it in and lay it down, just like that. Okay, so then I'm going to position all of my pieces, and I like to dry fit first just to make sure I'm really happy with everything's where it's going to go, and just kind of fiddle around with it until you're happy. And then we're going to get busy with some more foam squares, and we are going to attach all of these little guys. And again, I've decided to use the Vivid Script Sentiment. This time I'm using the Hello, and instead of using foam squares on the back of this, I decided to cut 2 extra ones out of black, and I'm just going to stack them, and then that way that's giving me the dimension without having the white foam squares in behind that you possibly could see. So that's a nice way around that, and then you get a nice little sentiment that pops up, but it's nice and solid. Okay, so just glue those together, again using the Barely Art glue. It is my favorite, just in case you can't tell. All right, so we're going to get busy now, and we're going to lay everything down. And I've got the dark teal going in the background. Then I'm adding my little half foam squares to my larger flower, positioning it, and then a light yellow over on the right-hand side, tucking it kind of in under that black leaf. And I've got this burst of white flowers and then another little yellow, so they balance each other off on the card, one in the bottom left, one in the top right. Okay, and then there's 2 elements of pink, the berry flower and the large, let's call it a daisy, and then a nice arrangement of small and large black leaves, which I think really, really highlights the colors and makes everything pop. Okay, and then once again we have I'm adding the sentiment to the center. Okay, just holding that down for a sec, and then we're going to flip this over and do our trimming. And there's another leaf you could pop inside. There's number 3 all finished. Okay, again, card number 4 uses all of the colors, but again, I am playing with something new, and this is the Eyelet Scallop border. And so I'm just pointing out, first of all, the flowers that I used, and there are these little guys right here. I cut a whole bunch of them out of the 3 different colors, and then a bunch of black leaves. And of course, just quickly showing you here how I offset them to layer them, and then added a black flower center, and then a black leaf. And I think in hindsight, if I was going to do this again, I think I would put 2 leaves on each of the flowers just to fill it up a little bit more. I do end up filling it up with a bunch of embellishments I'll show you at the very end. But here is the Eyelet scalloped border, and what I did was I cut it all in black, and then I used the outline border die to cut my card front so that I had my white card base showing out underneath, and that added the white behind the black and gave me a nice contrast at the bottom of this card. So now I need to untape everything, and I'm going to stick this back into my score buddy so that I can attach all of this. I ran out of tape, so I had to go and get another one. Okay, so you want to lay that down first, and then use a scrap piece of paper to protect your work surface, because we're going to put a whole bunch of glue on the back of this Eyelet scallop border, and there'll be some hanging out. You don't want to get it all over your work table. Okay, I got a little guy that I forgot to pop out there. And again, the Barely Art glue with this fine tip is the perfect glue for the back of this delicate little die cut, and it is a lovely one. I think I'll be playing with this one again. I looked at it seriously and thought about doing different colors of inlays, but you know, that'd probably take all day. But you never know, never say never. Okay, so just adding a little bit more glue just on the edges, flipping this over and laying it down. And again, using the white glue, you get a couple of seconds to maneuver things around if you don't get it in there just quite right. Give it a good press. Okay, I'm just putting the glue lid on so that I can work on this. I'm going to cut off the overhang. Okay, and then I'm going to move all the gluey bits out of the way, and we are going to start laying in our flowers. And so I did them in 3 rows, and a different color design in each row. And then you also want to kind of pay attention to which direction the leaves are going so that you have a nice selection of different points, and move them around just until they look nice and you're happy with them. You don't want them all going the same way. Okay, I really like this color combination. It's new for me, but it has some of my favorite colors in it at the same time. Okay, so then I started auditioning some different sentiments that I was going to use on the front of this. And let's just talk about them while you watch me glue down all of those flowers. I had another hello from the Vivid Scripts, and I did consider kind of putting that right over the center of the card, and I do like that, but I figured that I needed a little bit of anchor at the bottom. So I went with another one of the pieces from the Ideal Moments Sentiments, and again used little pieces of foam tape to add it to the bottom. Okay, and there's number 4 finished. And again, I think I used pretty much all of the colors, and don't be afraid to add black and white. And you could also take this other piece, the scallop piece that was cut off, and put it on the inside of the card. Okay, for card number 5, we are going to play with this beautiful embossing folder. I love this thing. It's called Blooming Butterflies. And as you can tell, I am getting my Lindy's Magicals out, and we're going to make a great big mess. But we're going to use the same colors. So Lindy's Magicals has pots, and they also have these little bottles. And the little bottles have a little shaker on the top. And I happen to have a bunch of colors that match the number 371 cube that we're using, and the colors I end up using are Cheerio Cherry, Crumpet Crumbs, Pinkies Up Pink, Lizzie's Cuppa Tea Teal. Those are all just tongue twisters. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm positioning my watercolor paper inside of the embossing folder. I just want an idea of where I want some of the colors. Next, I have a piece of watercolor paper, and I'm testing all of my colors. And this one here, the lid flies off, and I get a big blob, and it's way too bright anyway. So we're going to set that one aside. I don't even remember what color it was. We're not using it. Okay, so just working my way through these colors and making sure that the lid stays on them so that it sprinkles out instead of big blobs. I'm liking that little kind of peachy orange. Okay, when you get a big river of color like that one, you want to be careful and get rid of it. Ooh, I like that one. It's kind of a orangey red. We'll use those. And then the final one is a teal, and this one is quite lovely. Lizzie's Cup of Tea Teal. It's very pretty. Nice combination of green and blue in it. Okay, so I've decided I'm using all of these, and I'm going to put my test over on my paper towel to dry, and I'm using 4 by 5 1/4 pieces of watercolor paper for this because I want a white showing down the edges, creating a frame when we're finished with this. Okay, so I'm spritzing my watercolor paper. I like to do that because it helps to hold the powder in place instead of spritzing after. When it's dry, it flies all over. And I'm just adding my colors where I think they're going to show up in the flowers on the embossing folder. And this is kind of a guess through this whole section. So then once you have all of your pigment down, you're going to give it another spritz, and you can add some more color. Remember that it does dry lighter, so you want to go a little bit heavy with your color. And spritzing it again to get all those crystals going. And then I'm going to pick it up and move it over to my other paper towel to dry. And I'm going to do a few of these because I try different kind of different colors in different parts. When you look closely at the embossing folder, you'll see that there's like 5 flowers and then a bunch of leaves, and I'm just trying to position some colors kind of around them. Okay, I'm going with lots of orange and yellow on this one and lots of teal. Coming back in with some of that yellow in the bottom left-hand corner, and then spritzing a little bit more to activate it. That one's turning out quite pretty. You want to watch out for big puddles, okay? There's one going down the side of this one, so I'm just wicking it off onto the paper towel that I'm working on. So you want to kind of watch those wet ones as they start to dry. You can get rid of the puddles. Okay, so there's a couple of different pieces. I need some butterfly pieces, so the one on the right is not a card front. It's a leftover from my sheet that I was cutting down. And I'm just adding a bunch of different colors in there that I will probably use for the butterflies or for something else in the future. And that's one thing I like to do when I'm making a big mess like this, is cut a few extra pieces and use them up while you're playing with your Lindy's Magicals, and then just add them to your stash. And then the next time you need a background, you might not have to get the mess out. Okay, this one's going to be a lot of orange and red. I foresee a butterfly coming out of that one. And I'm using tweezers to hold it down flat. Okay, I'm wicking up any of the puddles from the one on the right. And then I'm going to move the pigment around and get rid of a puddle at the same time. Okay, and one final one, just in case. Okay, and I'm back to a red flower in the bottom left-hand corner, some yellow and orange ones, and a bunch of teal. Funny, I think this one ends up being the one I use. Pretty sure it is. Okay, so again, add a whole bunch of the pigment and then go back and forth between spritzing and adding pigment until you get the color that you're happy with. Get rid of any puddles. And you can let these sit overnight and dry, or for a couple of hours. I'm impatient, so I use my heat tool. If you get any white spots, you can just move the pigment around with a paintbrush. Okay, and see, these all use the colors that I'm using from my color cube, number 391. And I'm going to take that one and I'm lining it up inside my embossing folder because I want to cut it first. Okay, so we have this border die cut, and I need to figure out where to position it for maximum coverage on my flowers. Okay, and you want to cut before you emboss, because if you emboss first and then go back and die cut, when you run it through your die cutting machine, you're going to flatten out all your embossing. And try and keep your tape on the side that's going to be garbage. Okay, so I got that die cut and I'm popping it back in, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz the back of this because wet paper will give you a deeper embossed image. It helps break down the fibers in the paper, especially with watercolor paper. Okay, so run that through your machine, and then you get this beautiful embossed image. Isn't that lovely? Whew, I like it. So it's going to go on the top of another 4 by 5 1/4 panel because I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending on the background. And I'm just checking butterflies. And I'm going to use the smallest of the dies for the butterflies. And I'm just kind of auditioning again which ones I think I'm going to cut the butterflies out of. I've got all these extra pieces. Now this was my sample one. It ends up being the one I like. So I'm doing a blue one. And then I decide on a peach colored one at the same time. And I'm just reusing the tape from when I did the border. So here's the two, got them die cut. And then what you're going to do is pop them into the embossing folder and emboss each one of them. Okay, so we're all finished with that. I'm kind of liking that. Then we're going to get ready and we are going to do a little bit of ink blending. Distressed oxide inks, I'm tumbled glass and broken china. I start with a tumbled glass. It's not quite as tealy as I want it to be, and it's very light. So once I finish putting down that first coat, I decide that I'm going to bring some broken china in. You got to be careful with broken china. It's a lot deeper in color, so go lightly. It's really easy to add more. It's really hard to take it away once it's down on the paper. Okay, so I'm coming in with just checking it on the back of my card, and yes, it is the color that I want. So I need a place to blob off, so I grab another piece of the cardstock and just going to darken up that background, leaving a little bit of white space at the top, just for some added interest. Okay, and I've got my sentiment that I think I'm going to like. Again, the second hello from the Vivid Script Sentiments. And I'm going to use a bunch of tear tape on the back of my emboss piece. I don't like to use a tape runner when I'm doing this because you have to push so hard that you actually flatten out some of that embossing you work so hard to put on there. Okay, and then you want to just pick up the release paper. I have very short fingernails, so I like to use my tweezers when I do that. And we're going to tuck this right down in the bottom left-hand corner, flush with that background. Next, I'm going to get out my splat box because I'm going to do a little bit of splatter. So I've got the splatter white and the gold paint. Both of them are from Spellbinders. And the white is very, very, very concentrated. So you need a tiny little bit. And I'm just using an acrylic handle here to add some water to it and then splatter it all over my art piece. Okay, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the gold. Spritz it a little bit to activate the paint, and then just add a nice little gold splatter. I love gold splatter on this type of a card. I think it really adds to the background interest. Okay, and then we're going to let that dry. We're going to clean this mess up and then we're going to make another one. I have got the Lunar Paste. This is Gold Rush, and I'm going to use it as a finger rub. So I'm wiping it on my glass mat, and then I'm just fairly gently using my finger and running it over the embossing, and the embossed image that is pushed up is going to be where this paste ends up. And it really, really, really highlights the beautiful design in the embossing over top of our watercolored background. Okay, and I'm just running around. I'm also going to add it to my two little butterflies and then let that dry for a few minutes, and we'll start to put the card together. Just in case my art piece is still wet, I've got it over top of a piece of paper towel, and I gently used a tape runner to add tape to the back, and then I'm pressing it down, and I have everything all lined up and ready to go. I'm going to add some more foam tape to the back of my butterflies, and I'm going to use my Barely Art Glue to add my sentiment to the top. I've already got it all layered up because I already showed you how to do that. Okay, so add some glue to the back of that little guy and position it where you would like. I like top center. And then I decided that my peach colored butterfly was going to go just to the right of that, and my teal colored one was going to go over top of my big flower in the bottom left hand corner. There we go. all the colors used again, but in a different way. Okay, so I decided to go a little crazy, and I got out some embellishments, Spellbinders embellishments, some black ones and some gold ones, and I added a whole pile of them to each one of these cards. I think I went through 2.5 packages of the black ones, but I think they really add a lot of interest. I really hope you enjoyed this today. I had fun making these cards with you. Everything that I have used, I have linked underneath this video. There's also a link over to my blog where I share all of the measurements. So thank you so much for stopping in today. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving me a thumbs up and sharing it with your friends. And until next time, toodles!